Hey everyone, thanks for jumping on. It's so good to be with you again. My name is Joe, one of the pastors here at Grace, and excited to kind of hang out with you a bit before we dive into our weekend service. This is going to be fun this spring as we kind of continue to open up the conversation a little bit on what does it mean to not only follow Jesus, but what does it mean to be the church? What does it mean to be a part of the group of people that define themselves by being associated with Jesus? What does all that mean? So it's going to be a super fun conversation. And of course, one of the things that I like to do is if you're watching this right now, I love to kind of just dial in and say, hey, if you actually message me, text me, send me an email or something with the word, what are we going to go with here? We're going to go with bumblebees. We're going to go out there a little bit. We're going to go bumblebees. If you send me bumblebees, I'll send you a little note. I'll send you a little something just to encourage you back. But excuse me, it is great to be with you right now. There's lots of things happening as we speak. This spring has been full, is moving down the pike. But one of the things that I always want to make sure that we all understand is fullness doesn't mean that your calendar has to be full. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, but there's a lot of people buzzing around Grace Church. And one of the reasons there's lots of stuff going on is so that each one of us can find the one, the two, the three things that help us move forward in our journey with Christ. And so whether it's jumping into a class, like, I don't know about you, but I feel like the farther I go along in my journey with Jesus, the more I realize I don't know. The things that I wish I understood, the things that I want to kind of settle in my mind, that I want to have peace about, that I want help with as I navigate family or friendships, as I navigate my walk with Jesus directly. Like, I want to learn those things. There's great groups. We need people. Life is not meant to be lived alone. We're meant to do it with each other. There's so many one another type things that we can do that the Bible even helps us understand. So getting to serve together with other people, or jumping in and building friendships in some type of a group setting, being a part of helping other people begin to experience the wonder of knowing who Jesus is, whatever that might be. Meeting folks, getting into some type of group environment can be transformative, honestly. And then, of course, there's ways to serve. Guys, I wish I could somehow impart all the things that I get to see and experience, just give it to you right through the screen. There's always someone that needs help. There's always a kid that doesn't have a father that would just love to spend some time with someone. There's always a single mom that could use some help around the house. There's always an organization doing phenomenal work in our community that, if they had more people that would say, hey, I want to help, they could get so much more done in our community. There's just always a way to help, to invest in the kids here in our church, to help those that are a little bit older, to help those that are just in need or going through a rough time, to make a meal for a family that's struggling. There's so many things over and over and over again that if we step up to the plate and we step into those arenas, it's incredible what God can do in and through us. So whatever it might be this spring, when Grace Church, when I talk about there's all this stuff, you don't have to do all the stuff. Just, are we stepping into the arenas, the environments that we can start to flourish, that we can start to see our faith blossom, and that God can use us in really meaningful ways? So excited to do that with you, especially as we continue these conversations about what does it mean to be the church? What is it that God is pointing us as we're connected with all these people that are a part of a church? So as we kind of slow down, as we dial in a bit, maybe it's time to check out the app. Maybe it's time to start taking those steps forward. Maybe you just need to reach out to me or someone else in the leadership directly and say, can we grab a cup of coffee and meet and chat about those things? We would love to do that with you and do that together. But as you're kind of contemplating that, as I hope you're praying about that, let's go ahead and settle in a little bit. Let's grab that ice cold cup of lemonade, or maybe it's a hot cup of coffee, hot chocolate, whatever. Let's settle in. Let's get the distractions to the side. Get your phone notifications on the silent, and let's really just dial in on some great time together where we go experience Jesus, where we can go closer to Him and discover more of what He has for us. So let's jump in the room. We'll join everyone else, and we're gonna have a great weekend.
Hey everybody, welcome to Grace Church. Man, it is good to be together. I mean, we can all come from all our different places, and all the different things in our lives, but somehow we're all here in these moments together, which is going to be a great service. My name is Brad. I'm one of the pastors here, and I get the great privilege just talking just for a second here, but I'm thankful just to be able to join together with people, and no matter where we've been or what we did today, no matter what's going on in our lives, we can spend some time and some moments and have some meaningful conversation and just see what God does. And so I'm really excited about that because I really believe God shows up and he does big things. If you're a guest today, thanks for coming. I know it's hard sometimes to come to a new place, but thanks for doing that. Thanks for taking that hard step. And a couple things for you as a guest. One of them is we have a free gift for you. On your way out, it's just a little bag. You can grab that out there in that lobby. And if you'd like to talk to someone, we'd love to talk to you. I'd love to meet you and those things. But also, if you feel like you just kind of want to grab the bag and you're not sure you want to make the commitment to talk to somebody yet, that's okay too. No expectations. It's just a gift. It's a free gift. No strings attached. We're just glad that you're here. And it's our small way of saying thanks for making that. Just making us part of your life, even if it's just for the next hour or so. Another thing for you, and really for all of us, is that we have an app that you can look at. But really, it's the easiest thing is if you go right to the chair back right in front of you, you see a QR code. If you just open up your camera app on your phone and take it should be able to handle it from there. You click through that. It'll open up you right to our thing called the Weekly. Or if you want to go the old-fashioned way, go to the App Store, download our app. You can go there, just search Grace Ohio at your App Store, and click on the Bath campus when you do that. But if you click on the Weekly thing, the Weekly is such an important tool for me because it gives me a good snapshot of, okay, here's the things that are coming up right away this week. It changes every week. It updates a lot of different things on there. But you'll see, if you look through the Weekly, you see we have a big thing that's happening on Sunday afternoon right here from 3 to 5 in this auditorium. It's called Splash Bash. It's our baptism event we have for children, where a lot of times the parents are involved in that. It's incredible. So I would encourage you, if you feel a little gloomy sometimes, you feel like, man, is there anything good happening in the world? I'd encourage you to show up at 3 to 5 at our Gent Road building here, right in our auditorium on Sunday. It's a great opportunity to hear these kids' stories of life change and see how God has been working through them and through their parents. And I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. So make sure you check that if you're interested in that. There's groups and classes you can check out that are on there. Another thing I like on there is it's, as we spend time, we want to realize we're people who pray together, and so there's opportunities, things on there to pray for. And then maybe, we started a new series last week with Pastor Joe, and, maybe you missed last week. It's a good chance to get caught up. There's a good story you can follow along on there. So a lot of cool stuff. So I would encourage you to check that out, but just even if you want to do that right now, nothing wrong with that at all. But all that information to say, welcome, and it's great. God has been doing some really cool stuff here, and it's really Jesus who changes people's lives, and that's why we spend time talking about him and all these things. And he's really been doing some great things here at our church, and it's only him who can do it. And so we have this really cool event that's happening at the end of March, and I could tell you a lot about it, but really Pastor Jeff's the best at telling stories anyway. So check this out. You're going to hear from Pastor Jeff. He's going to tell you a little bit about this fun event that really impacts all of us and how God can even use it maybe one day to impact all the world for him. So check this out.
Well, hello, everybody. I just wanted to get on your radar something really exciting that's going to be happening during the month of March. So during the month of March, we're going to be celebrating the wrap-up of the All In, All Out Vision campaign. And we're excited to tell you some of the stories of how God has worked through your giving and that vision and the lives that he has been changing. So we're going to take those 3 weekends. Going to catch you up to speed on Restore. We're going to catch you up to speed on the investment into leadership development. And then the third weekend, March 25th and 26th, we're going to have a special service where we actually come down to where I'm standing right now and sign the floor in our new athletic space. And what I want you to be thinking about is the 3 people that you're praying for, 3 people that you pray for every day by name, that God will give you a no-brainer moment to share the hope of Jesus that you have in Jesus with them. That's why all of this is being created. And that's why all the vision was cast and all the money's been raised, not so that we can have a new building, but so that we can have the space that we can utilize to share the good news with Jesus with them and to help them know and love Jesus more and more. So looking forward to that. I am so excited. I think we're going to have a blast. It's going to be a fun few weeks just celebrating what God's done. And then the weekend of the 25th and 26th, we'll come down here and do that floor signing. Really hope that you can be a part of it.
Isn't that so much fun? I love that. And we're really looking forward to that. Hey, we're going to kick off with a few songs. Go ahead and stand up with us. We're going to sing together. love it. I love when we get together on weekends like this, just like Pastor Brad was talking about. It's just it really is something special when a group of people come from all different places in life and all different walks of life, bringing in all of our junk into the room together, and we be able to give that attention together to Jesus, to say, God, what are you going to do with us? What kind of vision do you have for my life? How do I fit into your plan? How can I get to know you more? These are all like kind of these are all the things that we get to do when we come together. Be able to set aside this time to say, God, I want to get to know you more. God, I want to see my life in kind of perspective with who you are. Could you show me your ways? Teach me about who you are. I with so many stories here, there's something we all have in common. Like one of many things, I guess, is that we're all in desperate need of the mercy and grace of God. God has seen us and seen each one of you, and he says, I've got a special plan for your life. But first, as you're invited into the family, I'm going to lavish my grace on you. I'm going to lavish my love on you as you are called into the family to be my sons and daughters. So before we jump into today's message, what I wanted to do was just be able to spend some time singing about God's grace and just the simple depth of it all. So I hope this is a time that we can use as we sing this song together to just see our lives in a little bit more of that perspective and accept his love for us. Could it really be this easy? That you love me like you say you do? And I've got years and years of striving, when there's nothing left to prove. Could it really be this simple? Your kindness changes everything. It's like your grace is on a mission to tear down my religion. You're all I really need. Hallelujah. All this time, how you love me, how you love me. Hallelujah. It blows my mind how you love me, how you love me, how you love me. Could it be I'm finally seeing you're not who I thought you'd be? You're not mad and you're not scared. All the shame and guilt I've carried, it's why you died for me. Hallelujah. All this time, how you love me, how you love me. Hallelujah. It blows my mind how you love me, how you love me. love that truth. I love it. Thanks for being here today. Why don't you guys go and take a seat for a bit.
Well, everybody, man, it's good to see you. You all look fantastic. It's really, man, good to be me tonight. Seriously, you look great. Should you like do something with your hair, or like, that's really good. Anyway, my name is Joe, and I'm not that funny, but I am one of the pastors here at Grace Church, and I am glad to be sharing with you this weekend as we continue to get into this whole idea of what does it mean to be those guys? What does it mean to be the church? What does it mean to be connected to the people that Jesus is calling to be with him? And so thank you for joining us. Thanks for joining us online, and hello to my Montrose family. It's good to see you guys as well. But yeah, last week we kind of kicked this off and started to dive into what does Jesus want the church to look like? And we bring a lot of baggage to that conversation. I mean, like, our culture, when we hear the word church, I mean, there's a lot of like negative thoughts. There's a lot of stuff that gets kicked around. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hurt. Some of it's totally legit. I'm not even saying it's a bad representation of some people's experiences, but boy, do we bring a framework to that conversation. And some of us, we've had fantastic experiences with the church. And so we almost don't even see how it's possible that others have had a negative experience or how all of that goes around. Some of us were here, but we don't even for sure know why. Like, we're like, someone drugged me here, someone's got me. I just know that I probably should be semi-connected. I'm pretty sure church is how you get connected to God, but I have no idea really what it means to be a part of all of this. Like, we're all coming from all these different places, and that's okay, right? It's really okay, because Jesus is calling us to something unique. And I'm wondering if we can't continue to just kind of put some of our assumptions, some of our experiences, some of our framework aside, and instead just look at, what does Jesus want? What is Jesus putting together when it comes to his people or the church? And so last week we kind of said a church is the people who have decided to be defined and directed by Christ. It's those that have said, okay, Jesus, you came. Jesus, you showed you are the Son of God. I truly believe that's who you are. I want to follow you. Anyone that has decided to say that I want to follow Jesus, you are a part of the church. You're a part of what Jesus is building. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the clearest things that he said about it, is he said, I will build my church. Right? In Matthew 16, he shares with his disciples that I am initiating this. I am putting this together. I am building my church, right? I'm putting my initiatives together. I'm the one that's leading this charge. And so, yes, there will be people that will be, the scriptures call false teachers. Yes, there will be people that are wolves in sheep's clothing, so to speak. And they will say, I did this in your name. They will say that I'm a part of the church. But if it's not attached to my initiatives and to my mission, then it's not the church that I, as the Savior of the world, am building. And then we took even a quick look at what are some of those things that Jesus is doing. What are some of those things that Jesus is building into his church? And so he's showing us that to be on mission with him, to be in step with him in the church, we're going to be loving God and loving other people, running after him with everything that we've got, and then letting that love completely flow out of us into our relationships and serving them, helping them, loving them with everything we've got, helping establishing the kingdom of God. The things that God is bringing forth to bear to help in our relationships, to help in our lives, he is actually initiating a different way of living. And if we're going to be in step with him, we'd be a part of that too. And then we're going to make disciples. We want to help people understand the wonder and the amazing power of what it means to have your life attached to Jesus and follow with him. If we're going to be a part of his people, if we're going to be his church, then this is at least the beginning of what that's going to look like. And so I'll say this kind of again, anything that Jesus isn't initiating, anything that wasn't something he said, let's do this together, then that would be a false representation of the church. And so if you kind of missed that conversation, that's where we started at last weekend. So check that out online. Go to our YouTube page, our app, our podcast, like check that out. And let's dial into what is the church? What is it that God's asking us to be a part of? Now this weekend, what I kind of want to take a part 2 of this conversation and just simply ask the question, how does Jesus want to work with me? How does Jesus want to work with you? How are you a part of the whole puzzle, right? How are you a part of the whole thing? And as a matter of fact, I actually think a puzzle is a great way to think through it. So we learned, my wife and I and my daughter, we learned that we actually like puzzles. And I'm not sure we knew that until that dreaded season of all of our lives, quarantine of 2020. And when you couldn't do anything and you're like starting to look through every box in the basement, like what could we possibly do to pass the time? We found some puzzles and we started putting some puzzles together. And so we're also Disney fans, so we're kind of nerdy that way. And we had a puzzle that kind of represented all the Disney World parks. And so this was really fun. And of course it wasn't a rectangle, so it was cool, but it had the Epcot and the Magic Kingdom and the Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom and putting all that together and working on 1,000 pieces. Took us a couple days. It was a lot of fun. Well, we got to piece 995 and suddenly we realized something, where is the piece, right? Why is something so simple so maddening? This is not a big deal. This is a small piece of cardboard, and I was losing my mind. I'm no, we must find it, right? And you're turning everything over and upside down, and I'm I can't find, we couldn't find it. We kept this on the table for days because we're we'll find it, we'll keep it. And we're Disney nerds and we liked it. We're gonna shellac this one. We're gonna frame it. We're gonna hang it up, right? This is gonna be the one. Can't find the piece. Can't find the piece. So you know where this puzzle's at now? It's torn back up. It's in the box. It's not worth it. If you can't find the one piece, and of course at the beginning, even if we ever saw it, and I'm convinced we got 999 pieces. There's no way this was our fault. Yeah, you don't believe me either, but. When you're looking at just a blue piece, at the beginning you're well, this isn't even important. We'll get to that later, right? We'll get to it later. It might be an edge. We'll get to it later. And that poor puzzle, now it's back in the box in the closet, probably never to be assembled again. All because it's missing one piece. What's the most important piece of a puzzle? It's the missing one. It's the missing one. You would have thought early on when they're all spread out, what are we going to do with this? It's probably the one that's right in the middle of the castle. It's probably the one right in the middle of the Epcot ball. It's the one that has Mickey on it, obviously. What's the most important? No, it's the one you're missing. And this poor puzzle may never be assembled again, all because it's missing a piece. And that poor piece, I don't know where it's at. I don't know if it's in the vent. I don't know if it's if it went down the vent and it's now engulfed in the flames of our furnace. I don't know if it's in the stomach of our dog. Everything else is in the stomach of our dog. I don't know. That dog will eat anything. Our rabbit might have even eaten it. I don't know. But that puzzle piece is gone. And now it's missing, right? And that puzzle piece, I can only imagine what it's thinking as it's in the recesses of our 90-year-old home thinking to itself, where am I? I don't seem to belong. Anywhere I look, where's the rest of my family? Where's the rest of what I'm supposed to be connected to? It's completely disconnected from anything that shows where it fits, what its purpose is, or why it was created. As we think about our own lives, there's a connection to this puzzle. As we think about when Jesus is calling us to be a part of his people, when we've decided to follow after Jesus, if we choose to step aside and to be the puzzle that's missing, the rest of the picture is lacking because you were designed to be connected with the rest of the pieces. So the puzzle, and that's everything from your church, your local representation of what Jesus is doing, all the way down to your community, your family, even the world is missing out. If you have decided, I want to follow Jesus, but we've decided not to be connected with him or his mission, and we've chosen not to be connected with him and his people, then your family is missing out because you're not a part where you're supposed to be. Your church is missing out because the picture is not complete. And you are probably wondering, why do I feel so disconnected from what it seems like Jesus is doing? When I watch other people get excited, when I watch other people share about how they did this or they do this or they somehow love volunteering for that thing. I don't get that. When you're looking at all this happening, why is all this way? Well, it's because we're stuck in life's furnace vent. We're stuck in life's dog stomach. We're not connected to the rest of the puzzle. We're not connected to the rest of it. And so we feel that distance. We feel like we're on the fringe. We feel like if I walked away, no one would even notice. Just like that piece walked away and no one noticed at the time, until all of a sudden you're trying to see the whole thing together and you're like, wait a minute, where'd that go? But by that point, it's gone. If we don't allow ourselves to be connected with Jesus, his mission, and his people, then we're a lot like this missing piece. And both of us are missing an element of what we're supposed to be connected to. Now, what's crazy about this for me, not only are we missing out, not only are you missing out, but there's a place for us. There's a home for that. If we suddenly found that piece, I would go snap those 999 pieces back together as fast as I could because, yes, we have found the one. Jesus designed you to be a part of his puzzle. He designed you to be a part of it. He wants you to be connected to his mission. I could wrap things up here in 30 seconds if we could just latch on to this verse that I'm about to show you. In John chapter 15, Jesus says this, "You didn't choose me, I chose you." I chose you. If you're in earshot of those words, maybe you're sprinting down the pathway after Jesus, maybe you're crawling after Jesus, maybe you're still at the starting line and you're feeling that nudge to get rolling. But all of that reality is because Jesus chose you. He wants you. He wants you to be connected to what he's doing. He wants you to be a part of the puzzle. When Jesus is laying out, when he looks at the world and sees all of the brokenness, when he looks at the things that are happening in your community, when he looks at the things that are happening as a part of your church, when he looks at the things that are happening with those that you love the most in your neighborhood, with the people that you work with, the people that you study with, the people that you're somehow, when he looks at the world and he says, what do we need to do? The we includes you because he chose you. He wants you to be a part of this. And if I could very awkwardly have the time to look each and every one of you in the eye and say, Jesus, the Savior of the world, God, the creator of the universe and all of its magnitude, all of its splendor, all of its wonder, all of its incredible nature, all of the things that are happening, looking at exactly all of the stuff that you've done, he chose you. He chose you. I want you to latch onto this so strongly that I made an absurd next slide. Jesus says, you didn't choose me, I chose you. I wrote this in my notes. He chose you. This is not based on how good we are, how smart we are. This isn't based on the fact that you're really, really good at figuring life out and you figured it out. This isn't based on the fact that, you're way better than most of the rest of humanity and therefore you're allowed to be a part of God's team. This is straight up, Jesus chose you. And when we're finding those nudges in our life to show up at a weekend service in a church building, when we find that nudge to log on and maybe check out what this church is all about, when we find that nudge that maybe we should be a little bit closer to God, maybe I should respond to him, he's choosing you. That's not arbitrary. It's not your funky lunch. It's the God of the universe trying to get a hold of your heart. He chose you. And it's crazy because it doesn't matter if you feel like your past is just an absolute wreck. It doesn't matter if you were cussing someone out in the van ride on the way here. God meets us in our imperfections, and he says, I will help take you where you need to go, but I'm choosing you to belong as a part of my family. I have such a deep conviction that if you're a believer, if you follow Jesus, and you feel drawn to this local expression of Jesus' worldwide church, then you are a gift to those around you. You are a gift to the people that you're sitting next to. You're a gift to the rest of the church. And you're like, Joe, I'm pretty sure I'm just a plain, normal blue piece. You are very important to that puzzle. Jesus has worked that out, and you can imagine putting the pressure on ourselves to try to fit in. It's not up to you. Jesus is the one that designed the puzzle. Have you ever tried to put a puzzle together without looking at the picture? Or put a puzzle together with the picture facing down? I know some of you all are like total geniuses and absolutely brilliant beyond like 99.9% of the rest of the population, but the rest of us are like, that's nuts. You need the picture. You need to look at the colors. You need to see what fits together. You ever been a Lego anywhere? Maybe from your childhood, or maybe your kids have one. You got all these Legos. You lost all the instructions. You don't remember all the pieces. You're looking at that giant bin of Lego, and you're like, what do I even do now? And you're like, I'll be creative. And so you get in there and you start building things, and you're like, look, a swan. And it's just like, that's not nice. Like, you don't even show anybody. You don't even put it on Instagram. It's like that good, And it's just like, well, and you really wish you had the instruction book, and you really wish you could see what were those pieces designed to create. You ever go to a junkyard and see all these car parts laying everywhere? And suddenly you just like see a muffler, and you're like, I have no idea what kind of car that's supposed to go on. I don't know what this is supposed to attach to. I don't understand. I know it's a car part. I know it goes. How does this work? Some of you car guys are like, it's a muffler, man. It can go on lots of different cars. Like, I know, okay? But just like, follow the metaphor, okay? But it's just like, when we see all of these car parts strewn around, we're like, I don't even know how this works. But the person who engineered that car knows exactly where all the pieces go together. The person that engineered bringing your movie fantasy to life through a Lego set knew exactly how those pieced together. That artist that drew that picture and superimposed it on a piece of cardboard and cut it into a bunch of pieces knew exactly how those fit together. God, when he looks at the landscape of the people that he has chosen, not only did he choose the pieces, but he knows exactly how they're supposed to work together. So the pressure's off. You don't have to look at the pile and go, where do I fit? You just get to go to the designer and say, where do I go? Where do you want me to snap in? Where do you want me to be connected with these other people that you've chosen to be a part of your mission to make the picture of Jesus more and more clear to the rest of us? The fun thing is that has been a question and a reality for people that have decided to be followers of Jesus ever since the very first people that have made that decision. Even the very early church would have asked the same questions, and they would have had the same reality that Jesus has chosen where they go. We're going to look at a few passages this weekend that kind of illustrate what the early church was discovering about this truth, that Jesus has chosen us and puts us together. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it says there are different kinds of spiritual gifts. You're gifted with something as a follower of Jesus, and there's different kinds. But the same Spirit, the same Holy Spirit, the same God is the source of them all. There are different kinds of service, but we serve the same Lord. God works in different ways, but it's the same God who does the work in all of us. You don't have to figure out what type of piece you are. There's the one God who puts it all together. He knows exactly where all of the gifts connect. He knows. The best part about that for us is what we're learning is not only has he chosen you, but he also will show you. So the pressure's off. He has chosen you. Yes, you're supposed to be a part of this, but where, good news, he shows you. It's literally him leading us through this. And it's a gift so that none of us can be like, well, check me out. I have figured out how all of this works. God's like, no, you didn't. You just followed my instruction book. Jesus is the one doing that. He is the one that understands how this whole game comes together. Now, this idea continues, and Paul continues this. He says, yes, the body has many different parts, not just one. And if the ear says, I'm not a part of the body because I'm not an eye, well, would it make it any less part of the body, even if the ear thought it wasn't a part? Or if the whole body were an eye, how would you hear? Or if your whole body were an ear, how would you smell anything? But our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where he wants it. Isn't it funny how, like, when you put a puzzle together, some of you have done a lot of puzzles, and have you ever, like, looked at a piece, and you're like, I'm looking at the picture, and I'm pretty sure there's an extra piece in this puzzle, because there's no way this piece fits in that puzzle. And then you get to the final 10 pieces, and you're like, well, doggone it, and it just sticks right in. You never saw it coming. But Jesus is like, trust me, you fit. You're a part of the body. Even if you just think, well, I'm not really sure because I'm not like the rest of them, it's okay. Some of you look like the Epcot ball. Some of you look like a blue piece. Some of you look like Mickey Mouse. Some of you look like a princess. You know who you are. But we all look different, and God's like, right, I need that diversity in my body. I need that diversity in my people. I need that diversity in my church. I want you to look and operate and be gifted differently. That's my design. And just because you don't think you're like someone else, or just because you don't think you're gifted like someone else, he says, that's okay. I'm piecing all of this together. Just because you're an ear doesn't mean you should be an eye. You should be the ear. I've told you that's where I want you to be. He continues, how strange a body would it be if it only had one part? Yes, there are many parts, but only one body. The eye can never say to the hand, I don't need you. The head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. Then we have this weird temptation where, okay, maybe I'm supposed to be a part of this, but then we look at someone else, we're like, you're different than me. I'm not sure you should be a part of this. And Jesus cut that out. I'm the designer. You throw that piece away, you're going to be very, very upset when you're suddenly missing the one blue piece. When suddenly you realize exactly why that person is supposed to be a part of this whole family, is supposed to be a part of this whole puzzle, you're going to wish you needed, and you wish that you had them. God chose us to be a part of his body, and he shows you where you fit into his plan. We need each other. Our body needs the other pieces. And that means the pressure is off. You did not have to train your ear to transform from being a foot so that it could be an ear. Your ear was like, oh, I hear things, I do things. My foot was like, I hold this large man upright. Like, this is so strange. Like, the body parts knew their function. And yes, when we were an infant, they might not have all worked totally well, and you just kind of flopped the wrong, but they figured it out. The more and more they developed, the more and more they grew, they became ridiculously useful. The pressure is off. Jesus knows what he's doing in you. Now, maybe you're thinking to yourself, and maybe you wish you could just blurt out to me right now, Joe, I have no idea what I'm good at. I have no idea where I would fit in the puzzle of a church. I have no idea how and where and why Jesus would want to use me. I have no idea what I bring to the table. That's okay. That is super okay. Let me share with you a little bit of my journey. So I grew up in a church. My grandfather was a pastor of we had about 50 or 60 people on any given weekend, tiny little church, and we would rent out a small community hall to meet in. And so every weekend, because we were related, we got to show up and be the chair setup team. And we had these nice metal folding chairs. And every week we would grab the chairs and we'd put them out, and then we would stack them back up and go put them away every weekend. Well, as a 10 and 13-year-old kid, like, that's totally my gig, right? Like, I want to help, I want to pick up the chairs, and like, they're bigger than you, and so you're doing this, and then as you get a little bit older, you're like, I can totally grab 4 at once, and then you're like, I can grab 6 at once, check me out, and eventually, maybe some of y'all did something like this, because there's something about, in particular, I feel like a 17 to 22-year-old boy, you're like, I can get 8. And you can barely move, but you're like, I got this, and it's like, you just kind of like, I can get all these chairs. Maybe that's just me, maybe I have issues, but like, that's kind of how I can do chairs, no problem, right? I did that for years and years and years. Then a church I got involved in college, after I had actually given my life to Christ, they had padded folding chairs, fancy, right? I mean, it was like but they still had to be set up and torn down every weekend, and so I would do that. I had I'm like, I have stacked chairs for years. I'm totally your guy. And so like, I helped do that. Well, then all of a sudden, one weekend, one of the college leaders that I was a part of in that class, he asked, hey, would you lead the next couple of weeks of this college class? And I'm like, como say what? Like, I'm the chair guy. Like, I'm not that guy. Like, I don't teach classes. Like, there's no way, I have no idea what I'm doing. But he's like, dude, I got no one else to ask. Would you mind, just a couple weeks? I'm like, okay, like, I guess I like to help, so that's fine. Well, I learned through that process that I actually kind of like digging into God's word and like helping people see something new. Like, I'm like, this is kind of neat, right? I kind of learned that. Like, that was fun. And then a couple months later that summer, I remember I got asked to be one of the people on stage for their Bible camp, for their kids' camp. And I got asked a couple of different things. First of all, I remember the children's leader being not huge, and he was teaching on David and Goliath. Can you just stand on stage kind of like this while I talk about how David's the hero and Goliath's that? Sure, buddy. And I just stood there. But I'm like, you know what? I don't care. That's fine. And then a couple days later, he was like, would you help? They're low on volunteers for the kids' music part. Would you kind of just jump around and do the I'm like, I guess, so I'm just up on stage, like, doing the things. I got no idea what I'm doing. But you know what I discovered there is I actually didn't mind being up front. I didn't mind being vulnerable. I didn't mind kind of making a fool of myself. Like, I didn't mind as much of that. I liked connecting with people. I also learned that I'm probably not the guy that should work with kids all the time. Like that, I had a limit. But I also learned that, you know what? But if you're in a pinch, I can help with the kids. That's fine. I remember this was like all in a row for me, but it was about 6 months later, the guy that played guitar and led worship for our little like college group on campus, he said, hey, I heard you have a guitar. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, do you play? I'm like, let's emphasize the fact that I have a guitar. And so no. And he was like, well, do you know any chords? And I'm like, well, I know like 3 chords. It just takes me like 10 seconds to switch between them. He's like, why don't you bring your guitar out one night? You can kind of just sit there and strum alongside me a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? That kind of sounds fun. I've been meaning to learn this anyway. So I show up and I'm like, he's on like the 3rd song. I'm on like the 3rd chord, and it's just like, well, 2 weeks after that, he ghosts me. He's gone. And I'm like, was that your leadership development plan? Like that was it? Like I'm sitting here, I have no idea what I'm doing. I can barely play 2 or 3 chords in a row, but I'm the new worship leader, so like that's fun. So that summer, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go for it. And so I like learned how to play rhythm guitar, and like I picked up some songs that group liked to sing, and I became the worship leader for that small group for about the next 2 years, right? And what I learned was like, you know what? God, it's worth it, I should say, to learn a new skill if you feel like God is asking you to do it. Because I never would have thought I should be the guy leading any group of people in worship. I really enjoyed doing it for those 2 years. I don't know I had any business doing it, except for apparently God, chose me and was showing me something. I was asked to visit someone in a hospital like a year after I became a youth pastor, and this woman was in her like last months, and they were like, Joe, go visit. I'm like, I am 23 years old. I have no idea what to say, do to encourage a 92-year-old woman who's literally on her deathbed. What am I supposed to do? And the answer was, well, you go. I'm like, okay. And I walked through this super uncomfortable hospital visit, and it was not pretty, but you know what? We had a fine time. And her family was actually super grateful the next time they saw me that I went and did that. And what I learned through that is like, God can use me even when I feel super uncomfortable. God can use me even if I don't feel like this is the perfect fit at the moment. If God is asking me to do it, I'm learning that just being there is actually one of the biggest assets of all ministry. A couple of summers ago, I got asked to be a part of helping make sense of a bunch of cultural issues raising up in our community. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to like make racial reconciliation happen. What do you mean you want me to be a part of this? You want me to help navigate some of the tension between these couple of communities? You want me to what? And I learned through the last couple of years that I don't know everything. Maybe some of you are way ahead of the game on that, but I recently learned I don't know everything. And I also learned that other people have vastly different experiences than I do. I learned that it's my job to point people to Jesus, not prove that I'm correct. I learned that relationships move at the speed of the trust that we're able to form together. I've been learning so much by stepping into something that I felt like God chose me to do, and along the way, He's showing me more and more how to be a part of those things. That's actually what this shirt is right here. I was just a part of something this weekend where we're trying to figure out, what does it mean to be one city? What does it mean to actually work together? And Jesus continues to show things more and more and more. I've been at Grace now for 15 years, and I've had 7 different job descriptions. I can't tell if I'm just a junk drawer pastor or if they're just being gracious, like, oh, good try on that one. Let's see if you can do this one. It's always changing, and that's okay. It's okay if stacking chairs is not your long-term gift. It's also okay if it is, because Jesus is the one putting the puzzle together. I was sitting down with my dad this week, and this actually kind of blew my mind, because my dad is not your typical mic drop kind of guy. My dad was a mechanic for 42 years, loved the guy, he loves Jesus, he's a wonderful man, but he's just not the guy that like says something that like you get a tattoo of, you know, like he's just not his gift, which is fine. But this week, he was telling me, he was like, you know, it's our track with Jesus, our pathway with Jesus is a lot like an assembly line that builds cars. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, so many times like we're trying to picture the car, but all the way back here on the assembly line is a guy that's just screwing a bolt into a piece of steel. And you're like, what am I doing? What is this? Why do I just put bolts into steel? Like, why is this? And then you move down a little bit farther, and this person's like assembling the chassis. Some of you are like, what's a chassis? Some of you are like, he didn't know mufflers are on different cars. What does he know a chassis is? Like, And then these people down here are like upholstering seats. And these people down here are putting on the wheels, and they're the ones inflating the tires. And these people down here are the ones that are actually painting that brand new 2023 car of your dreams, the color of your dreams, and they get to see the full picture. They're seeing exactly what it is that you wish you had. But this person, let me tell you, if they don't put the bolts in, it doesn't matter what that looks like. You haven't even done step 1. We haven't even done the first step. How can we possibly dream about what's down here? And Jesus is saying that your life, your engagement with me, your ministry, your gift is a lot like this assembly line. We're always asking the question, well, what does the car look like? What color is it? Where am I supposed to land? What's the final vision of my life? Where am I supposed to be? And God's like, we're 85 steps away from that. How about we build the foundation that makes all that worth it? Because if you and I don't work together on these first few things, there's no way that this dream will ever look anything like either you or I are hoping it will. Let's start here. Some of us, we have to be willing to step into the assembly line. Some of us, we have to realize that at the moment we're the ones upholstering the seats, and it's okay that we don't know what the car looks like yet. Some of us, we're the ones screwing in the rearview mirror. We're just on this assembly line, and Jesus is doing something in us and through us, but we have to have the mindset that we're willing to step into it. So the early church, Paul was helping them understand this. He says, so dear brothers and sisters, I'm pleading with you to give your bodies to God because of all that he's done for you. He's chosen you, he's helped you, he's redeemed you, he's given you life, he's taking you down this path, he's unshackling you from your sin, he is showing you what life looks like. I plead with you because of how wonderful God is that you let your life be a living and holy sacrifice, that you give your bodies to him, and he will find it acceptable. He knows where it fits. He knows what your sacrifice is going to mean. He knows where that comes. This is truly the way to worship him. You're like, God, what do you want from me? Take a step. Well, God, I need to know what it means, though, to like worship you and connect with you. He's like, offer yourself to me. I know where you go. Yeah, but what's that going to look like? Offer yourself to me. Let me show you. This whole thing started with, will you follow me? You said yes. Let's go. Let me take you where we're headed together. Yeah, but what's it all going to look like? Take a step. Trust me. Let me show you how this pathway works. Paul continues. He says, so don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know what God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So many of us wish that we could be at the end of the assembly line. Somewhere around here for me, I wrote a paper in college about how I would never be a pastor. If God would have said, Joe, you're going to be a pastor at this place in the assembly line, I might have bailed. I wasn't ready for it yet. I needed my mind renewed. I needed to know how to put the upholstery on. I needed to know how to kind of continue down this pathway to where all of a sudden it started to make sense. It started to look like God's good and pleasing and perfect will for me because I had gone down the pathway that he was calling me down to become the person that he was crafting me and gifting me to be. But it all started back here with stacking chairs. And we're going to be on different pathways. So don't get scared. This isn't a pastoral call, right? Like you're not... But he is creating different automobiles in each and every one of us if we'll simply take the step. Every time I showed up, every time I stepped in, it showed me something about myself. It showed me something about what God was doing in my life, and it showed me more and more about him. Every time I was willing to say yes to something that he put in front of me, he grew me. God chose you, God shows you, and God grows you. You're like, I'm not ready for that yet. He takes care of that. He takes care of that. Every time we serve, every time we step into encourage, every time we say, I can give to that, lead that, step into that, every time that I'm like, you know what, I can show kindness to that person, I can work on forgiving that person, every time that we do that, God will continue to grow you and show you more and more how you are uniquely wired and gifted and fit into his mission and into his grand puzzle. We just have to be willing to take the step. I offer myself to you, God. You're the one that knows. Now, some of us, we're like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what to look for. Where do I step into? What do I say yes to? And so I put a couple of categories together to help us think through this. Because if we're trying to follow Jesus into that assembly line that makes us more and more the person that he is creating us to be, the first thing, we need to try to find a burden. Who are you trying to reach? Who are you trying to serve? Some of us, our heart breaks for something. Our heart breaks for something. It might be a person. It might be a ministry. It might be a certain age group. I don't know. but your heart breaks for, I have to help somehow people that are stuck in human trafficking. I must help kids that don't have regular, healthy adult influences in their life, whether it's because mom and dad have to work 2 jobs, whether it's because dad has, I was just talking with a leader in our community, this poor young man, his dad passed away about 3 weeks ago, and a week ago his mom passed away. Like, what is our burden? What breaks our heart? What gets us going? What do we have to be a part of? Maybe Jesus is saying, get on that assembly line and just help somehow. The second thing I wrote down is, where can we work together? How can we collaborate with other people? Puzzle pieces aren't very useful on their own. Puzzle pieces work best when they're connected with the pieces they need to be connected with. Partnership is huge. Cooperation is key. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you're trying to reach the homeless in the Akron community, let us introduce you to some wonderful people that are doing great things with the homeless that desperately need more people that care about the homeless. If you have a burden for people for teenagers that desperately need mentors, do you know what the number one ask in our schools, in our organizations, in our churches are? The number one ask is, please give me some version of a willing and healthy adult that's willing to be consistently engaged in these people's lives. Would you collaborate with someone and say, you know what, I can show up, I can be a part of that. Even people ratios is a big part of things. Anybody that's been attached to education knows that help more adults is always a wonderful thing. Let's work together with somebody. The third thing is, where can I point people to Jesus? How can I somehow be a part of something that's making Jesus make sense? I don't mean you have to be the one that's always articulating the news of Jesus, but how can you be a part of it? Because if we're going to be a part of Jesus' mission, it's somehow going to be connected to that. If we're going to be a part of his church, it's going to somehow be reflected there. Now, all of this, these 3 things, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to volunteer at Grace Church. That's not what I'm communicating right now. Now, it might mean that. It might mean that there certainly could be a place for you. There's all kinds of places to serve here that are doing all 3 of these things. But this is not a volunteer recruitment Sunday. This is God chose you. He is showing you. He wants to grow you into the person you were created to be and how you fit into his people and mission. And he is the head. I didn't have any idea what I was doing with my life. I'm not sure I know what I'm doing with my life now. But Jesus continues to show up, and Jesus continues to lead. My measly offering, I learn things about myself. I learn a ton more about him, and he continues to do what he does. This will never stop. This will never stop. We have to trust him. We have to trust that he is building this, that he is the head. If you're healthily engaged with him, you'll never suddenly feel like, finally, I'm in. I got it. I'm the one with all the confidence now. Because even this current part of the journey I'm on, I wish there was a way that I could impose the emotion, the pressure of being the guy that has to teach when Pastor Jeff is gone. If you've been around Pastor Jeff at all, he is a phenomenal leader. That man loves Jesus. He teaches and leads well. I have to be the person to stand up here and share with you what God's doing in my life, I have to follow that act? Are you kidding me? It's not an act. Jesus chose me. Despite what I thought about myself, despite the paper I wrote in college, Jesus shows me more and more, day by day, moment by moment, what it means to be dependent on him, leaning into him. And he is faithful, and he continues to grow me. I don't know what tomorrow will look like. I don't know any of that. But what I do know is he is the head of the body. And I will willingly offer myself as a sacrifice to step behind him, follow him, and discover what he has for us together. Now, some of us, we're still feeling like, I don't have an opportunity in front of me. I don't know where to find a burden. I don't know where to work together. I have no idea how to point people to Jesus. What do I do? So I want to make this really, really easy for you. I want you to get a cup of coffee with one of us. I want you to get connected to one of us in leadership here at Grace, and I want you just to begin exploring something, maybe at the beginning of the assembly line, that says, let's be a part of building this picture that God is doing. And so you can text the number that's in the weekly. If you're online, you can text the number on the screen. You can do it, it's right here. If you're in the room, text that number, and we will get back to you, and we will set up a time just to chat. You're like, I don't know what to do. That's fine. This isn't about force feeding everything. We want to discover with you how God has chosen you, how God is showing you, and how God is growing you to be a part of his ministry. Let's chat. Let's do that together. Let's walk this journey with Jesus together. Jesus says this. He says, this is my commandment. Love each other. In the same way I have loved you, there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus died for us. He gave himself completely for us. And he rose again, showing that he has the power over life, that of course he's the head of all of this, and that he is still currently building his church and engaging you and nudging you to take your next step on your journey of becoming the person you were always created to be. You didn't choose me, I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit. You are being beckoned to be a part of what Jesus is doing. He's chosen you, and I cannot wait to see what God is going to do in and through you. My question is, are we open to being a part of that? Are we open to saying yes to what Jesus has for us? The band is going to come out and lead us through some time, and I hope that we'll just take advantage of it, and that we'll spend some time praying. All right, Lord, am I willing to take a step? Am I willing to get on that assembly line? Am I willing to discover where I fit in your puzzle? Because that's how I'm a part of his mission. That's how I'm in lockstep with him. And wherever it is, I don't care if I get to put the finish coat on, or I don't care if I just have to put bolts in the steel. I want to be a part of it. And you know the crazy thing is, wherever you fit, wherever you're at, if that's what God has gifted you to do, you're going to love it. You're going to love being a part of that process. You're going to love landing where you land because God is doing something in you. You'll learn, it's wonderful. Will you pray with me? Jesus, thank you so much for being so faithful to love us, to choose us. Lord, help us never to skip past that. Help us to realize that this isn't about proving ourselves. This isn't about being the best version of ourselves. This is all about realizing that the creator of everything looks at us and says, you're worthy because I say you're worthy. And all of those things that are your imperfections and all the things that maybe need ironed out, he's like, I'm the one that does that. So walk with me, talk with me, be with me. Let me show you what a transformed life looks like. Father, I pray that we would heed your nudges, that we would take the step, and that we would offer ourselves as a sacrifice to you, trusting that you know how it all fits together, trusting that you know how we work, trusting that you have gifted us to do what you have called us to do. And in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
And I could run 1,000 miles to win the race of life, but what's the value without you? And I could write 1,000 songs to captivate your heart, but more than offerings, Lord, you seek the depths of me. You see me. You see my heart through the eyes of your mercy. In the light of your Son, you love me with open arms and the pride of a father. And I was once a prodigal, burdened by my shame, till you came running to remind me your love is unconditional, and in your eyes I'm worthy of forgiveness. What was lost is now redeemed. You see me. You see my heart through the eyes of your mercy. In the light of your Son, you love me with open arms in the pride of a father. I love the truth of the good news of Jesus, of his grace and of his mercy, that as he calls us to it, he makes us worthy of it, not because of something we've done, and not because of anything that we can muster up or any sort of courage or any sort of goodness of our own, but as a good father, he knows that all of our sin and all of our failure has been paid for by Jesus Christ. And when he sees us in the light of Jesus Christ, his perfection. It's absolutely phenomenal. And so when he says, I got a plan for you, it's like he's telling his own Son, I got a plan for you. And we can walk in that relationship. So while we might feel unworthy, while we might feel confused or wandering, God's like, I got this. Just walk. So why don't we all stand together? And as we stand together, we're going to sing this and just bask in the greatness of his mercy and his calling, all wrapped up into one. Let's sing.
Who am I that you love me? Who am I that you save my soul? Who am I without you, Lord? Who am I to be worthy? Who am I that you're mindful of me? Who am I that you call me yours? Who
your mercy, in the light of your Son, you love me with open arms, in the pride of a Father. 'Cause who am I that you love me? Who am I that you save my soul? Who am I without you, Lord? Who am I to be worthy? Who am I that you're mindful of? Who am I that you call me home? You see me, you see my heart through the eyes of your mercy, in the light of your Son. You love me with open arms, in the pride of a Father. Celebrate that, Jesus. God, thank you for your goodness toward us, and that calling and that invitation to walk with you into who we were made to be, Lord, comes with the grace, with the forgiveness, not of our own accord, the worthiness of it, Lord. Worthiness of that calling is not because of us, and it's not because of somehow getting our act together or cleaning up or whatever. It is based on you, Jesus. Your great work to pay for our sins, to bear that weight, to carry that, so that we can be seen, Lord, not as just good, but somehow pure. Lord, only you can do that miracle. So we thank you for that, God. People come together, strangers, neighbors, body is one. Children, generations, every nation, of kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth, that God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in His blood. Jesus, light of heaven, bread forever, His kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth, God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. I love it. That's our prayer. That's our hope. His kingdom come, His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And that's what we long for. Hey, thanks for spending this time together. God bless you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you around.